प्रमुख स्वामी सुखकारी, प्रमुख स्वामी सुखकारी, ये संत परम हितकारी।
गाथा महापुरुषनी संत परम हितकारिणी, गाथा महापुरुषनी संत परम हितकारिणी।
महापुरुषनी आछे कथा प्रमुख सुखकारी।
Swami Shri was a dynamic leader, yet one who constantly served as a silent Sevak. A Sevak who would follow the footsteps of his gurus Shastriji Maharaj and Yogiji Maharaj in serving the devotees through relentless vigilant, traveling from one center to another, from one assembly to another, from one house to another, to motivate and nurture the devotees day after day. All this whilst managing the countless other administrative tasks of the organization.
On the 13th of April 1955, Yogiji Maharaj, he arrived at the Mumbai airport. And Pramukh Swami Maharaj was also there to bid farewell to Yogiji Maharaj for his first trip abroad to East Africa. With Yogiji Maharaj going on this abroad retreat, that meant that now Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he had dual responsibilities. One of looking over the satsang activities, but also the second of looking over all the sanstha activities and all over India. So that means that Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he's going to have to increase his vitran. In those days, the sanstha didn't own any vehicle. So the only mode of transport was to go by train or go by ST bus. But this didn't stop Pramukh Swami Maharaj from doing his travels.
After bidding Yogiji Maharaj farewell on the 13th of April, Swami Shri was due to catch a train to Atladra on the 14th of April. And he reached Atladra the next day on the 15th of April. As he arrived in Atladra, Swami Shri got news that Shriji Swarup Das Swami from Bochasan had passed away. So immediately Swami Shri made changes to his Vichran plans and he arrived in Bochasan. After arriving in Bochasan, Swami Shri stayed there for a few days. He fulfilled the final rites of Shriji Swarup Das Swami as well. And after concluding all the final rituals, Swami Shri once again embarked upon his Vichran. On the 23rd of April, Swami Shri went to Anand and he arrived on the 24th of April.
And then from Anand, Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he went back to Atladra on the 26th. Then from Atladra on the 27th, he went back to Bochasan. Then on the 28th, he went to Ahmedabad. On the 29th, he went to Sarangpur. On the 30th, he went to Gadpur. And then he reached Gondal on the 2nd of May. This was just a sample of how hectic his Vichran was. And then he stayed there for a few days, and on the 7th of May, Pramukh Swami Maharaj fell ill. But he didn't let that stop him. The next day, he went all the way from Gondal to Ahmedabad and reached there on the 8th of May. Now, Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he was just one. But there were many devotees and many wishes that he had to fulfill. But Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he went out of his way to fulfill all of his devotees' wishes, not looking at time, nor looking at his own health. Many people go out of their way to help other people, but when they finish their own activities and they have spare time, and they use that spare time to help other people out. But Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he was different. He spent all of his time fulfilling his devotees' wishes, and in his spare time, he would do his own work. I think it's always going to be a mystery. How did Pramukh Swami Maharaj balance all of his activities and fulfill all the wishes of his devotees.
While Swami Shri was in Badalpur, he was replying to letters in the mandir. There, a devotee named Chatra Singh entered the mandir and requested a senior devotee who was managing Swami Shri's schedule at the time, "I want to take Swami Shri to my farm for a padramni. Please arrange for it." This request had frustrated the senior devotee, and he spoke out. "Being a teacher, don't you have any shame in demanding this? You are asking to take such a sant to a farm? When padramnis in the village are barely being completed, how can he visit a farm? He won't be able to come. Now go." Receiving such a harsh denial, Chatra Singh felt somewhat embarrassed and stood up. Sitting a short distance away, Swami Shri called him. He had overheard this conversation between Chatra Singh and the senior devotee, and he asked what happened. "Nothing," Chatra Singh replied. However, being attentive and mindful, Swami Shri remarked, "I already heard the conversation. You go to the farm, I'm coming."
Now, when Swami Shri arrived to Chatra Singh's home, Chatra Singh's joy knew no bounds. He was over the moon. Swami Shri visited Chatra Singh's house. It was a very small hut, a simple hut. Swami Shri had to even bend down whilst entering the hut. There was no sort of resources in the house. Chatra Singh had put a simple cloth on the floor for Swami Shri to sit on. The floor itself was very rough as well. But Swami Shri, without uttering a single word, Swami Shri calmly sat on the floor. He had Chatra Singh perform pujan of Hare Krishna Maharaj, also perform the arti. Now Chatra Singh had made a sankalp that if Swami Shri visits my home and my farm, that I will give 25 rupees and 76 paisa as an offering for Yogiji Maharaj's Amrit Mahotsav. Swami Shri fulfilled his sankalp and he visited his house. So Chatra Singh, in return, he offered his devotion at the feet of Hare Krishna Maharaj.
And then Pramukh Swami Maharaj got up, and he bent down and he came out of the hut. But as soon as Pramukh Swami Maharaj came outside, there were other devotees there that wanted Pramukh Swami Maharaj to come to their place for padramni. So what started at 9 a.m. continued all the way to 4 p.m. Pramukh Swami Maharaj non-stop. He did padramnis from 9 to 4. And what started out in Badalpur ended up 10 kilometers away, and Swami was in Duwaran. But Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he had a smile on his face and he was happy to do padramnis at all these Hari Bhaktos' houses. And then Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he continued his vichan. And from there, Pramukh Swami Maharaj went to Bhumel, to Rajkot, Gondal, Limri, Mochidar, Tajpur, Ningara, Keriya, Garada, Junagadh, and Dhoraji. In just a matter of 3 months, Pramukh Swami Maharaj visited more than 100 villages and towns.
Swami Shri was not only industrious but also compassionate. Even in his own trying difficulties, he never allowed the feelings of a devotee to be crushed. His compassion to tenderly attend to the feelings of every devotee never waned, even though he was doing 80 to 90 daily padramnis. In the village of Mojidar, there resided Ganesh Bhagat, who was a very strong devotee. He was blind, but that never obstructed his spiritually wise soul from holding immeasurable Guru Bhakti towards Sastriji Maharaj and an immense friendship with Yogiji Maharaj. Fully content, he was just now counting his last days. Ganesh Bhagat had asked Yogiji Maharaj his word, "May I leave Akshardham in your presence?" Thus, a grand Parayan was to be held in Mojidar in the presence of Yogiji Maharaj. To fulfill his final promise to Ganesh Bhagat, Yogiji Maharaj arrived in Mojidar and asked the sadhus who were studying in Mumbai to come as well. A Parayan on Hari Lila Kalpataru began in the village.
The Parayan continued for a couple of days, but everyone felt that there was something missing. It wasn't the same without Pramukh Swami. So Pramukh Swami Maharaj was told about this Parayan, and on the Friday, the 14th of August in 1964, Pramukh Swami Maharaj arrived at Ahmedabad from the village of Piprao.
And then from Ahmedabad, Pramukh Swami Maharaj took a train the next day on the Independence Day. And from Ahmedabad, he went to Surendranagar. And then from Surendranagar, he changed trains and he reached Chura station at 8:30 p.m. at night. But for some reason, when Pramukh Swami Maharaj got out of the train, it was dark and there was no people around because of the Independence Day. But because everyone was so involved in the festivities that they forgot to send a car to pick up Pramukh Swami Maharaj. So they looked around, okay, what are we going to do? It was just Pramukh Swami Maharaj and his Sevak Sant.
Their only option was to spend the night at the station. Opposite the station, there was a cotton ginning mill, which was closed, but Swami Shri spent the night outside. Now this whole day, Swami Shri had nothing to drink. In the morning, when he left from Ahmedabad, he only had a small vatki, a small bowl of milk to drink. And the whole day had gone in upwas.
But yet, Pramukh Swami Maharaj, without any complaints, without causing any fuss, he spent that whole night in the monsoon season in the evening, and he passed that night on the platform there. He was the president, but yet he didn't make any complaints. The next day, there were devotees from Botat who had arrived, and there was a car sent for them. So Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he hopped in that same car with them.
When Swami Shri arrived into the village, the organizers of the Parayan had realized their mistake, that they had forgotten to pick up Swami Shri the day before. They immediately went to Swami Shri, bowed down to him, and began to ask for forgiveness. They apologized over and over again. But Swami Shri very calmly said, "There is no fault of yours. Sometimes such things happen." Swami Shri very lightly, he brushed everything off.
With these words, Swami Shri then began discoursing on the divine deeds of Sriji Maharaj from the second chapter of the Hari Lila Kalpataru. Everyone felt that Swami Shri's actions aligned perfectly with his words. Swami Shri truly practiced what he preached throughout his life. In November 1967, Yogiji Maharaj and Swami Shri reached Demol. When they reached there, Swami Shri had come down with a fever and a throbbing headache. It was also quite cold. When the local devotees urged Yogiji Maharaj to come for Padramni, Yogiji Maharaj replied, "Pramukh Swami will come for Padramni on my behalf."
But then everyone insisted Yogiji Maharaj to stay back and that there was a special sabha at the school. But then for that as well, even though the volunteers tried to convince Yogiji Maharaj, he said, "No, Pramukh Swami, he's the chief of our Sanstha and he will come to that sabha."
Despite his body shivering with a fever, Swami Shri embraced Yogiji Maharaj's Agna and began the Padramnis in Demol. 1, 2, 5, 15, 25, all the way up to 45. If that were not enough, he then reached the school for the sabha. The toll from all these Padramnis had drained him of energy. Whilst delivering the discourse, he began struggling for words and began to shiver. But he downplayed any of this. As per Yogiji Maharaj's Agna, Swami Shri properly addressed the sabha before leaving for Ramol. In Ramol, Yogiji Maharaj was conducting katha while seated on the platform of a dairy farm. As soon as he saw Swami Shri, he announced in his presence, "Now that our Pramukh Swami has arrived, he will speak." By now, Swami Shri's body was pushing back to take on any further activities. His spirit, however, readily willed to follow Yogiji Maharaj's Agna.
He went on stage and he was shivering and he couldn't say his words properly. But at that time, Hakabai, he had realized that what's going on with Pramukh Swami Maharaj. So instantly he got up and he made an announcement and he ended the katha. And then he took Pramukh Swami Maharaj, they rushed him to his Utaro. And then right away, they started medicine. But from this, we can see how courageous Pramukh Swami Maharaj was just because of his Guru's Agna. Otherwise, if it was anyone else in this type of situation, they would have quit.
It was clear to all that Swami Shri totally ignored his body during extensive periods of Vijra. He also did the same when endeavoring to perform all types of seva. No seva was beneath him or beyond him. No matter the situation, whether night or day, Swami Shri would always lend himself to any opportunity of doing seva. Irrespective of the hardships or impact to his health, he led by example on how to take the opportunity to be involved in the most menial of sevas, for the sole purpose of pleasing one's Guru.
There was a mandir opening ceremony coming up in Ahmedabad in May 1962. Events like these present trying times because it's always down to the wire. Resources are scarce and the clock is ticking, yet everyone wants to put on the absolute best show possible, all while working in teams with many moving parts and all while being spiritual. To accommodate all the people that would be in attendance, a great many padded mattresses and quilts were needed. They'd be needed for cushioned seating in the assemblies and for people to use while sleeping. It made sense to rent these items from Ahmedabad, since that's where the event was being held. But there was a local administrator in the festival management committee who had a bone to pick with Yogiji Maharaj. You see, Yogiji Maharaj had a soft corner for Gondal. This person resented that, and he wanted to chip away at it by insisting that the quilts and mattresses be transported from Gondal. His argument was that it'd save money to do it this way. But that was just a farce. Yogiji Maharaj saw through the charade, and he for one was truly concerned that Gondal's goods would be damaged in transport or lost since they didn't belong to the local team hosting the event. We must remember that this was 60 years ago when our fellowship was barely afloat and when consumer goods weren't as readily available as they are today. That's in part what heightened Yogiji Maharaj's concern. But Yogiji Maharaj also wished to protect this man's dignity, and so he compromised by asking his trusted Pramukh Swami to take up the responsibility of transporting the quilts and mattresses from Gondal and getting them back once the festivities were over.
So before the celebration began, Swami personally acquired the quilts and mattresses from Gondal. He counted them, loaded them on the truck himself, and traveled to Ahmedabad in the same truck. And once the celebrations in Ahmedabad were over, Swami Shri first arranged for vehicles to return the utensils borrowed from Bochasan, Atladra to their respective mandirs. But then after that, Swami embarked upon the task, the mission of collecting the Gondal quilts and mattresses from every nook and corner of Ahmedabad. Since the accommodation facilities for the devotees had been arranged at different schools, community halls all around the city, Swami personally visited every place to collect every quilt and mattress himself.
It took a couple of days to find all of these quilts and mattresses, but Pramukh Swami Maharaj loaded them on the truck with the Sevak Sant himself, and Pramukh Swami Maharaj counted them 4 times, not just once, but 4 times. Pramukh Swami Maharaj counted all the quilts and the mattresses that were brought from Gondal. Pramukh Swami Maharaj had put them on the truck, and it was evening time, maybe 8 or 9 o'clock, and they had loaded everything up. And Pramukh Swami Maharaj hadn't slept for 2 weeks. It was just a hectic vicharan for him, but all of these celebrations, everything one on top of each other. And Pramukh Swami Maharaj hadn't slept properly for 2 weeks. So the Sevak Sant, he had made a nice space for Swami on the truck, and Swami slept on the mattresses in the truck.
The journey was to last more than 5 hours. But halfway through, the truck driver grew fatigued, and so he pulled over for some rest. Remember that this was May, the middle of the Indian summer. Swamiji's here sleeping out in the open in a parked truck. The mosquitoes that thrive in this season must have had a field day pestering him throughout the night. Come morning, the truck set out on its way to Gondal once again. For the remaining 2 or 3 hours of the journey, Pramukh Swami and the other Sant did Goshti. They talked about satsang. The two reached Gondal at 11 a.m. the next morning to return the quilts and mattresses. Yogiji Maharaj too happened to have come to Gondal, and he was so proud to see Pramukh Swami. It wasn't even the mattresses or the quilts. He was happy to see Pramukh Swami and his loyalty, his integrity, his willingness to go the extra mile for Shastriji Maharaj's Sanstha. The mandir opening ceremony that occurred in Ahmedabad that May was significant because it was the first time that marble murtis were consecrated in a mandir's central shrine.
Now, on the concluding night of the Pratishta Utsav, a youth was engaging in cleaning seva in the kitchen department. Now, he was trying to push a cart full of kitchen wastage, full of rubbish, up a slope. Now, the load's excessive weight, the cart was very heavy. It prevented him from pushing it up the steep slope on his own. It was around 10 p.m. He looked around. No one seemed to be nearby.
And he saw Swami, so he started contemplating to himself. Okay, Pramukh Swami Maharaj is, such a big person, and how can I call him? And he just kept contemplating, okay, should I call him or should I not call him? And he was still gripping the actual trolley. And then while he was thinking about this, Pramukh Swami Maharaj came towards him. And he goes, what are you doing? So, the youth goes, look, I have to take this waste and I have to dump it in this particular area, but I need some help. So Swami Baba, he didn't say one single word. He held onto the trolley and he helped this youth, up the slope. And Swami didn't leave at that time. He helped that youth to throw the waste where he had to throw it. And then they went back down.
This young man was just astonished. Because just days ago, he'd seen Pramukh Swami addressing thousands of people from the festival's main stage. And here he was offering his energies for something so lowly, so pedestrian. Even so, there was no air about him that asked for recognition for what he'd done here. It was merely his personal goodness, his bhakti, his concern for others that propelled him. This youngster was so touched by Pramukh Swami and by satsang that he later himself became a sant. His name was Narayan Prasad Swami, and he burgeoned as a renowned artist, a respected Swami, and of course, one who always eagerly helped others. There are those who intentionally move away when someone needs help. There are others who helped when asked. Then there's Pramukh Swami, who just had this knack of knowing what needed to be done, stepping in for the assist, and staying until the task was finished. Swami Shri was once in the village of Kantharia for a Parayan, which is a lecture series wherein one speaks on scripture. He himself was the orator, which is a sacred and prestigious role. One afternoon, he was passing by the kitchen, and he saw a sant making fried puris. This is a task that's better performed with two people, with one rolling the puris and the other frying them. But that sant was alone. Pramukh Swami was, of course, headed in a certain direction with some task in mind. But as soon as he noticed that the Swami was alone, he stepped right in to help. And this wasn't one of those grand kitchens we see in many of our mandirs today. It was a small, dingy room with maybe one tiny barred window. The stove was a smoky fireplace inflamed with cotton twigs. Upon walking in, Pramukh Swami Maharaj turned an oil can upside down, took a seat on it, and began frying puris next to that Swami. Pramukh Swami was a masterful orator who sat atop a decorated Vyaspit for parayans. But he didn't hesitate even the slightest when it came to sitting on that sticky oil can to fry puris. Such was his dedication and eagerness for seva.
Swami Shri arrived in Sarangpur to celebrate Jaljilni Ekadashi on 27 September 1955. Now the next day on Baras, everyone did Parna, they broke their fast. And many of the devotees departed, and the sadhus and devotees remaining at the mandir, they all went for rest in the afternoon after lunch. Now anyone who does an upvas, who performs a waterless fast, they know that the rest on the next day is a really enjoyable rest. Now Swami Shri had observed a total fast without taking one drop of water. That too despite being busy with the arrangements for the festival as well as conducting numerous padramnis. So that afternoon on Baras, his attendant sadhu, Dharma Jivan Das Swami, had already prepared the bedding to allow Swami Shri to sleep peacefully in the afternoon. Swami came to rest at the usual time and he slept on the bedding. The attendant sadhu, he was also sleeping nearby, but after some time, Dharma Jivan Swami, his eyes opened. He looked to the right and he saw Swami's bedding was empty.
So he got up and he started looking for Pramukh Swami Maharaj. He saw Pramukh Swami Maharaj cleaning the Hari Bhakta's bathrooms. Yeah? And Dharmajivan Swami came there running and he goes, Swami, you go to sleep and I'll clean the bathrooms. At that time, Pramukh Swami Maharaj, the president of the Sanstha, he goes, now there's two of us, let's both work together and get this done.
It was only when Dharmajivan Swami took the bucket and started to bring water that he realized the extent of Pramukh Swami's silent endeavor. Water had to be carried from the Shankli stepwell. Some of you may be familiar with Sarangpur's topography. These toilets were between the present-day chiku trees and the Sarvasva on that sidewalk we used to take when going for Pramukh Swami Maharaj's darshan in the back from 2013 to 2016. And the stepwell is underneath the present-day meeting hall on the other side of the Sarvasva. Dharmajivan Swami took the bucket from Pramukh Swami and came to the stepwell. From there, he had to descend about 30 steps to reach the water. He'd fill the bucket, then climb back up to get the water to Pramukh Swami. It was quite taxing. After doing it twice, he stopped to wonder, how many times must Swami Shri have climbed up and down these steps before I came? It's easy to do bhakti or seva when people are watching, because in such instances, praises are our wages. But what about when no one's looking? Pramukh Swami was a silent servant. He helped out of the goodness of his heart because it was the right thing to do.
Swami Shri was a leader who believed in performing seva himself, rather than simply delegating it away to others. A new chapter of Swami Shri's seva bhavana was about to unfold at the birthplace of Akshara Brahma Gunatitanand Swami for the celebrations of the Bhadra Murti Pratishtha ceremony at the start of the summer of 1969.
There's a village called Bhadra, all the way out in western Gujarat by the Gulf of Kutch. Bhadra is special because it's the place where Akshara Brahma Gunatitanand Swami was born. Our belief in God's eternal presence amongst us through Akshara Brahma is our fellowship's defining characteristic. And so anything and everything related to Akshara Brahma means quite a lot to us. In 1969, there was a mandir opening in this village of Bhadra, atop Gunatitanand Swami's very birthplace and childhood home. And so the event was very significant to all of us, and especially to Yogiji Maharaj.
Just like Yogiji Maharaj's Amrit Mahotsav celebrations in Gondal, Bhadra too faced an extreme shortage of water. Added to this crisis, now the only available water source was from a well that was located on the other side of the dry river Un.
જેની અંદર બહુ થોડું પાણી હતું કે પણ આપણે જો કરીએ તો એક દિવસમાં બે દિવસમાં ખલાસ થઈ જાય. એટલે બધાએ સ્વામીને પ્રાર્થના કરી કે આપ દયા કરો તો આમાંથી આપણું કામ થઈ જાય. સ્વામીએ ધૂન કરી ઠાકોરના પુષ્પ અંદર પધરાયા કહો અને જાઓ કે આ સમયો થશે ત્યાં સુધી પાણી ખૂટશે નહીં, હજારો માણસો પાણી પીશે વાપરાશે તો વાંધો નહીં આવે, એવા આશીર્વાદ આપ્યા. પણ એ પાણી ત્યાંથી આપણે મંદિર સુધી લાવવાનું, નદી પણ લગભગ 100-150 ફૂટ પહોળી અને રેત એટલે ખોદવાનું હતું. કંટાળથી જેને કંટાળ આપ્યો થાકી ગયો, મૂકી ગયો, રેતી પથરી જાય અને પાછું પૂરાઈ જાય, ખોદે એટલું પૂરાઈ જાય. પછી સ્વામીએ કહ્યું કે આવશું એટલે પછી ગામના માણસોને સ્વામી બોલાયા. જવાન બધા છોકરાઓ આવી ગયા અને બધાને આજ્ઞા કરી કે પ્રમુખ સ્વામીની સાથે જાઓ અને આપણે બધું આ કામ છે એ કરો. એટલે પછી અમે એ કામ લીધું. એટલે અમે સાધુ 5-2-4 હતા અને હરિભક્તો બધા 5-50. એટલે દરરોજ સવારે બપોરે ખોદીએ, સવારથી સાંજે ખોદીએ ને પછી રાતના પાછું ચાલે 12 વાગ્યા સુધી. પાટિયા રેતી છે એટલે પાટિયા મૂકી દઈએ એટલે રેતી ધસરાય નહીં. અને એમ કરીને નદીની અંદર 6-8 ફૂટ જેટલા પાઇપ નીચે નાખ્યા અને ત્યાંથી પાણી લઈ અને જે કામ આપણે મહિના સુધી કરીએ તો ના થાય, પણ 3-4 દિવસમાં નદીની પાર આવી ગયા અને ઠેઠ નદી મંદિર સુધી પહોંચી ગયા.
Moreover, the Dharmashala's land where the celebration was to take place was a terrain with large ditches and lots of pits all over the ground. Leveling that land, where a stage, sabha mandap, yagna mandap, kitchen and all the other facilities were required to be set up, was indeed another challenging task. On top of this, the requirement to install water tanks and hand pumps, it proved to be even more difficult. And even more than this, all of this work was being carried out in the scorching summer heat. Swami Shri, however, he courageously jumped into all of these difficulties
Swami would be there from 8 a.m. to midnight. Then young volunteers would come from the village and help until 3 a.m. Swami would be there the whole time. Sometimes he'd even head back to the mandir to grab snacks for everyone. Then he'd come out and serve everyone himself. When it came time to rest, he'd be exhausted. He did have a separate room, but most often, he wouldn't even make it there. He'd sleep in the mandir's open hall or at the work site on a pile of dirt. And he'd be up every day at 6 a.m. as regularly as the sunrise. This routine lasted for about a month and a half. To get ready in the morning, he'd use the common toilets and bathrooms alongside everyone else. His meals, too, were simple. Again, alongside the rest, for breakfast he'd have cubes of jaggery, which is a type of cane sugar, with leftover rotla or rotli. Sometimes he'd have sweetened milk, but only if it was available. He'd never ask for it. And in the evenings, he'd have khichdi.
Many of those that were a witness to Swami Shri doing seva during these times have said that Swami Shri never worried about his own convenience. He never paid any attention to his own body. Swami Shri unhesitantly carried headpans of sand with us. When we saw Pramukh Swami, we felt joy, we felt loved, we felt fortunate to have been given this opportunity to do seva with Pramukh Swami. That is why when Pramukh Swami called us for seva, everyone felt that we must go.
Another important task for Swami Shri was providing living arrangements for all the people who'd be attending the event. Bhadra is a small village. Of course, there are no hotels there or anywhere near there, not back then and not even now. People would have to be put up as guests in private homes around the village. But here, even homes often didn't have proper roofs. And so Swami Shri himself would visit any and every home that seemed fit. He'd ask the homeowners how many rooms they had, and then he'd humbly request them to make some of the rooms available for our guests. Whoever said yes, Swami Shri would have someone with him note their name on a list. He'd then assign a serial number to the house, add that number to the list, and there and then he'd decide which invitee should be assigned that room. In this way, every evening for a week, Swami journeyed around the entire village and managed to secure about 200 rooms for the guests. In addition to these private rooms, he also deliberated with officials to reserve spots for common lodging at the Ramji Mandir, the village affairs office, and the local school. Apart from Bhadra, Swami's search to arrange accommodations also took him to many nearby towns and villages. A short note in his diary from March 14, 1969 bears testimony. He writes, "Went to Jamnagar today, secured beds for 2,000.
On the 9th of April 1969, Swami Shri notes down that we scouted for accommodation at Hansraj Shet's bungalow in Jodia, at Hunnar Udyog, also at the district primary school, at the girls' school also, and also at the house of Kastur Chand."
Swamiji also shouldered the responsibility of arranging for electricity and raising and maintaining the mandaps or tents at the site of the celebrations. He notes on March 15th, had a discussion with Parmar from Rajkot about raising the mandap, discussed electricity with a gentleman from Jodia. As if that were not enough, he also had to source the required rations for the kitchen. A glimpse into how he arranged for the much-needed grains comes from his March 26th note, wherein he writes, "In the morning, went to see the crop of wheat at the farm, then proceeded to the village of Majot and held a gathering, raised donations of wheat, jaggery, and millet, then went to Dangra and Rajkot." Thus, the preparations for the festive opening of Bhadra Mandir called upon Swami Shri to shoulder multiple roles and responsibilities in multiple departments to fulfill multiple sevas.
During one of the many late nights in Bhadra, Swami Shri once went to the river Und at 1:30 a.m. to check on the ongoing seva that was happening. There he also served snacks to the volunteers who were doing seva. Thereafter, he called a very familiar local Patel. Now, this Patel's house had been obstructing the development work of the mandir campus for some time. And so Yogiji Maharaj had wanted the mandir to buy it from him. Yogiji Maharaj's mere wish was Swami Shri's highest command. To this end, Swamiji had many a time requested this Patel to sell his house to the mandir, but to no avail.
Now, in the middle of the night, Swami once again attempted to convince the Patel to do the same. But the Patel was unwilling to yield at any cost. The clock struck 2:30 a.m. Those working there began heading back to the village. On their way back to the village, through pitch dark farmlands, amidst the numbing silence of this night, Swami continued to explain to this Patel. But he did not relent one bit. Swami urged so passionately while pacing along that he started breathing heavily and at times even gasped for air. But this Patel showed no sign of submission. 3 a.m. They neared the village and were about to reach the mandir campus. Now the Patel grew restless and wanted to leave. Swamiji, however, was not one to yield so easily.
He clung onto his hand at the mandir gate and pleaded in a very gentle tone, "Patel, please agree with this and accept the offer. Yogiji Maharaj will be extremely pleased. We are not snatching away anything, are we? We are willing to pay you the full amount to buy the house. You will receive a much better place than this. You have Bapa's blessings." Eventually, the Patel experienced a change of heart and agreed to sell his house to the mandir at a fair price. Swamiji's dedication and determination finally came through. After the Patel left, Swamiji turned to the Sevaks and Sadhus and stated that Patel was a hard and tough negotiator. Indeed, it was only because of Yogi Bapa's wish that he finally agreed to comply.
Without a second thought, Swamiji had given the entire credit of this achievement to his Guru, Yogiji Maharaj. Even in the private corner of a casual conversation after a taxing overnight triumph, his Guru Bhakti never lost sight of its lighthouse, Yogi Baba. The following day, when all the legal processes were complete and the possession of the Patel's house was taken, Swamiji sent everyone to level the structure in order to continue the development work. Swami himself even joined in the seva. He lifted rubble stones and carried them on his head to a distant place. Seeing this, Mandan Bhagat rushed to Swamiji and prayed, "Swami, please don't do this work. We're all here, aren't we?"
Swamiji replied, "You are here, but only you will benefit. What about me? So please let me do it." Playfully saying this, Swamiji further added on a serious note, "Here at this place, thar will be offered to Thakurji. Sadhus and devotees will eat, irrespective of how big or small a task. The importance of seva always coursed through Swamishi's veins. Thus, to make the celebrations in Bhadra a success, Swamiji completely surrendered himself at the words of Yogiji Maharaj."
So during the various organizational meetings pertaining to the Mandir Motsav in Bhadra, a discussion was held to decide which murtis were to be consecrated in the new mandir. Now, some senior devotees, they felt that 2 marble murtis of just Akshar Purushottam needed to be consecrated. But it was Yogiji Maharaj's wish that 3 murtis, Dham, Dhami and Mukta, Gunatidanand Swami, Bhagwan Swaminarayan and Gopalanand Swami respectively, that they be consecrated in the Garbhagruh of Bhadra Mandir. So expressing his own opinion was never Yogiji Maharaj's humble nature. And so he didn't firmly vocalize his position. Hence, on this occasion, he merely remarked, "Do as Pramukh Swami says."
So at that time, Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he spoke to everybody in that meeting and the wishes that Yogiji Maharaj had, and he calmed everybody down in the right way, explained a lot of things. And then at that time, Pramukh Swami Maharaj convinced everybody that there will be, Dham, Dhami, Mukta in that middle shrine. So Swami Shri, he was just amazing the way he used to speak to people and adapt with people's feelings and things like that. But the main thing was that he knew what Yogiji Maharaj wanted and he would never go against Yogiji Maharaj. Emni je ruchiyati, e pramanaj, he would do his seva in his work.
The 3-day grand celebration of Bhadra Mandir commenced on the 21st of April.
पुण्य पुरा विरया बड़ा
રીજ્યા શ્રી ભગવંત પ્રગટ ધર્મ પ્રવર્તાવવા પ્રગટ્યા એકાંતિક સંત હારે વીરા જઈએ તેવા ગુરુ પાસ રે જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
હારે શિર સાટે લેશું અક્ષરધામ રે જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
કે હારે શિર સાદે રાખી વિશ્વાસ રે જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
અનેક જન્મના પુણ્યથી મળ્યો મનુષ્ય અવતાર સર્વે પ્રકારે સમજીને કરીએ ઊંડો વિચાર એ હારે હવે ના જોવી કોઈની વાટ રે જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં કે હારે ભલે આવે જો વસમાં ઘાટ રે જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
હે હાલો જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
ઘણી ઉપાધિ સહન કરી બહુ બહુ વેઠ્યા દુઃખ તો પણ મોહબ્બત રાખતા કદી ન આવ્યું સુખ કે હારે વીરા મૂકોને સર્વેનો સાથ રે જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં કે હારે વીરા શિર સાટે ભીડો હવે બાથ રે જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
ઘરમાં ઘૂસી જે રહે નીકળે નહીં જે બહાર ભાગ ન લે સાચા સંગમાં તે નરને ધિક્કાર હારે વીરા શીખવા ગુણાતીત જ્ઞાન રે જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં કે હારે વીરા રહીએ સદા ગુલતાન રે જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
હે હાલો જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
સ્વામી શ્રીજી અખંડ રહે અંતરમાં કરીવાસ એવા સાચા સંતનો રાખી પૂરણ વિશ્વાસ કે હારે વીરા કરી લો ને આપણું કામ રે જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં કે હારે વીરા તુરત મળે હરિધામ રે જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
દેશો દેશમાં વિચરીને કરવું અલૌકિક કાજ સાચા સંતને સેવવા મેલીને લોકલાજ કે હારે વીરા અવસર સારો આવ્યો જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં કહે શંકર આવો જોગ મનમાં ભાવ્યો
જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
કે હારે વીરા અણમોલો અવસર જાય રે જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
હારે મારા હૈયામાં હરખન માય રે જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
હે હાલો જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં
હે જઈએ સ્વામીજીના સંગમાં.
Mandir's consecration ceremony took place on April 23rd, 1969. As soon as it was finished, Yogiji Maharaj left Bhadra for Gondal. Pramukh Sai Maharaj bade him farewell and then resumed his seva of winding up after the event. That task took 3 days, after which, on April 26th, he wrote in his diary, "Today we return all the goods we had used. No items were missing." What a complete and clear audit of the celebrations. This short entry makes apparent the precision with which he administered the entire event. The event overall was a grand success. Even with insufficient facilities, sparse volunteers, and meager means, Swami Shri culminated the Pratishtha ceremony in Bhadra so remarkably. Another sparkling and successful celebration was added to his list of incredible achievements.
This is our last mandir. From now onwards, Pramukh Swami will build mandirs. These were the unexpected but prophetic words of Yogiji Maharaj in the lead up to the Pratishtha ceremony. The audience perhaps took this as a cryptic statement, but an earth-shattering yet silent reveal was taking place right in front of their very eyes. The glory, majesty and divinity of Pramukh Swami was slowly being slipped out by Guru Yogiji Maharaj, who at the same time also expressed his wish to initiate a staggering 700 sadhus and prophesied that this too will be fulfilled by Pramukh Swami in later years. The Sampradaya maintains that the Akshar Brahm Guru is the only one who reveals his successor, and Yogiji Maharaj, in no uncertain terms, was revealing his successor to be none other than Pramukh Swami. Next time, we pay homage to the glory, majesty and divinity of His Holiness Pramukh Swami Maharaj through the various prophecies and declarations made by his gurus along his entire life journey. Yogiji Maharaj, now at the age of 78, is looking to plan his return back to Akshardham. It was now time for Yogiji Maharaj, a divine visionary, to let all of his expectations and wishes manifest through one, Pramukh Swami. Join us for a truly sensational season finale, episode 7, A Guru Revealed.
મને તો એમ જ થયા કરે છે કે આપણા કેવા ભાગ્યનો પાર આવે એમ નથી કે પ્રમુખ સ્વામી જેવા ગુરુનો યોગ થયો. તેઓએ આપણને સૌને નિહાલ કર્યા છે. એ અનુભવ આ જીવન ચરિત્ર વાંચતા વિશેષ દૃઢ થશે. આ વાંચતા ખૂબ જ આનંદ થશે. સ્વામી બાપા નજર આગળ તરવરવા લાગશે.
कैसा जादू आप मिले हो स्वामी, कैसा जादू आप मिले स्वामी हम पे किया, हर खुशी से हमारा जीवन भर दिया स्वामी, भर दिया। दिल में तेरे लिए कुर्बानी रहे प्रमुख स्वामी, तुम्हारी कहानी रहे जब तक धरती पे सूरज की रोशनी रहे, ये सितारे और चांद की वो चांदनी रहे। प्रमुख स्वामी तुम्हारी कहानी रहे, प्रमुख स्वामी तुम्हारी